Hello everyone, this is your instructor, Dr. Vaughn, and I am actually re-recording this video. Some of you might have seen the old version of it, but hopefully I got the screen dimensions right so you can actually see the toolbar up at the top of the window this time. For those of you that didn't see the previous video, the intent is to show you how to use the equation editor tools that are built into Microsoft Word for typesetting some of the types of expressions and equations that you're going to run into on your homework. So I've set up a little header. This is what the top of your homework could look like. You don't need to use this kind of format. Some people use APA title pages. Some people have this kind of a header on their page. Really what I need to see is your name somewhere on there and the seminar number that you're working on and a specific announcement of which problems from which sections you're looking at so that I can follow along in the book as you're doing them. Your homework does need to be typeset, and so one of the most frustrating things for me is to try and read the work when you don't use the tools that are at your disposal to format things appropriately. It's hard to guess sometimes what's in the numerator and denominator of fractions, or is that caret symbol supposed to represent an exponent? We have to do that sometimes in the discussion board and other areas that don't have these kinds of tools built into them, but fortunately Microsoft Word does have these tools. At least the most recent version. I understand from some other students that if you have an older version of Microsoft Word, you may not have the equation editor built in by default. You might have to look around for some other add-in software that'll do the equivalent of the equation editor. One tool that I've used in the past, and I think it's fairly inexpensive if you're interested, you're certainly not required to purchase it, is called MathType. So look up MathType and see what it can do for you. It's like a super version of the equation editor. Okay, so nonetheless, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to use a hypothetical. This is not an actual problem from your book. It's one that's similar to some problems in your book. So this problem number 1001 is not a real problem number. The one thing that I'm going to try to emphasize throughout here is writing your responses with full justification, trying to write even simple mathematical expressions with complete sentences. So I'd like to demonstrate that with you here with just how we might introduce the problem. So we begin with the rational expression, which is kind of how the problem might be presented to you in the text. Okay, so now I'm ready to type this problem statement that you might be just copying from the book before I actually do any of the work involved in simplifying it. So the equation editor tool can be found under the insert menu, and then for me it's right over here on the right hand side of my toolbar. It says equation, and then right below that it says symbol. In some other versions of Word you can kind of see it in the middle of the insert window, maybe over here somewhere, and I guess it kind of depends on how you have your toolbar set up, because in the latest version of Word, you can really highly customize each of these toolbars. But mine's right over here. I'm going to click on this equation, and what you see is this blue box showing up in our document, and this is where I'm going to create the equation. These are all the tools that you have available to you, and these are all menus full of tools. And this is a menu full of different kinds of special symbols, and all you got to do is click on any one of those, and it'll show up into your box. I do want to caution you that you should try to put only the equation into the box and use your text outside of the box, because otherwise it starts to interpret your text as being variables, and it writes everything in italics in particular, and it groups it all together into one image document. So just try to put your equations by themselves using this tool, and use your text using the standard formatting tools in Microsoft Word. All right, so we're ready to get started. Now, a rational expression is it's a big fraction. You can think of it that way. So there's a numerator and a denominator, and the numerator and denominator might consist of messy kind of stuff, including some other subfractions. And the problem I'm going to do for you has fractions in both the numerator and the denominator of the rational expression. So I'm going to use this fraction tool, and I'm going to click on the first option here, which looks like a fraction with two boxes, one for the top and one for the bottom. So it creates this little shell for me. And now I can just click on each one of these little boxes and fill it in with what I want. Now the numerator of our expression is going to be 5 over t plus m. So the first thing in the numerator that I'm going to have is another smaller fraction. So once I'm in the smaller box of the big fraction, I'm going to use the fraction tool a second time to get a smaller fraction in the numerator of the big fraction. I'll put 5 in the numerator of this smaller fraction and t in the denominator of this smaller fraction. Now I'm pressing the right arrow key once to get myself out from under the fraction, and now I'm next to the fraction, so I can continue typing the numerator expression, which is plus m. So the numerator is 5 over t plus m. Now I'm ready to switch to the bottom of this rational expression, and this denominator of this rational expression is again going to be a fraction. So again, I'll go to the fraction tool, and this time the denominator of the expression is going to be t over m. And then I can click outside of this equation box to let it know that I'm all done, and it goes back into where I can type text again. Right? So this is our rational expression. 5 over t plus m is all over t over m. I'm going to temporarily zoom out so you can just kind of see this in a little bigger font on this video. Okay, so I hope that that's all clear for you. I'm at about 130 times magnification right now. So this is the problem now that we want to simplify. And one way that you're going to learn in this particular section, section 7.5, first lesson that we go through in intermediate algebra, is one way to simplify rational expressions is to find the least common multiple of the numerator and the denominator. So we look at the least common denominator. This numerator expression has a denominator of t, and this denominator expression has a denominator of m. So first, we find the LCD, least common denominator, which is the quantity t times m. And then we're going to multiply. Good thing they have auto spell checker on here. The numerator and the denominator. Denominator of our rational expression by the LCD, which is t times m. Okay, now this just kind of said the same thing two different ways. The first we just stated what the LCD is, and then I said what I'm going to do next. Okay, now we're actually going to do that step. We're going to take this rational expression and we're going to multiply the whole top by the quantity t times m, and we're going to multiply the whole bottom times the quantity t times m. So I'm going to jump back into the equation editor, but I wanted to also demonstrate one thing that's kind of neat about this is once you spend the time creating something like this, you can actually copy it and paste it in lower and then continue editing it in this new iteration. Okay, so I had 5 over t plus m, and that I want to keep that. Now I'm going to use a great big time symbol, and I have to go back to my equation tools. In case they were visible, you can just click on the equation tools for them to come back, and I'll do a big time symbol. Now I'm going to put another fraction in, and on the top I'm going to put t times m, and on the bottom I'm going to put t times m. You're multiplying the original expression times something that's equivalent to 1, which makes this rational expression equivalent to the original rational expression. You notice that I also like to separate these things out on separate lines because I don't want to equate two things that are not equal to each other. I want to justify different steps in the process of simplifying this. So the next thing that I'm going to do is take this t times m and I'm going to multiply it times the numerator, which means if you have parentheses around this, let me just go ahead and put the parentheses in because it's simple enough to do. Let's just paste this in there. I'm going to add this whole expression. I want to put brackets around. So I'll go to my equation tools and go to the bracket function and put in a parentheses. See how it just added it around that whole expression? And then what I'm going to do is move the t times m from this other fraction up into the numerator of the expression that I was looking at. And down here, again, I'll put the times the t times m. And I'm going to write this one as t times m over 1. Just to really emphasize the fraction times fraction business. Okay, so I've already done this part. I'll delete that out. And here we have just a restatement of the line right above. Alright, so now on the next line, what I'm going to do is distribute the t times m So we'll copy this again, paste it in down below. And now I'm going to lose the parentheses and just have 5 over t times m. And what's going to happen here is that the t from the denominator is going to cancel this t over here and leave me with just the 5 and the m. So this numerator expression, the first term is going to be 5 times m. And the second one is going to be the m times the t times m, which is going to give me the 1t and the 2 m's, which is going to be t and then m squared. So I'm going to change this m into the exponent, which is the script tool here, and give the m an exponent of 2. And now I've distributed the t times m, so I don't need that anymore. So that's the numerator. And in the denominator, these m's are going to cancel each other out. You have anything over 1 is just equal to the anything, so we're only going to be left with the t here times the t over here, which is just t squared. So again, I'll delete all of this, and instead I'll use the script tool and put a base of t and an exponent of 2. So this is our simplified rational expression, and it actually doesn't simplify very much further. There's nothing else that cancels here. The only other thing that we could do is to factor out the 2 m's that are in common in the numerator. You have 1 m here and you have 2 m's here. I could pull one of those 2 m's out and rewrite the numerator as put an m on the outside and take one of them away from each of the 2 inside spots. So those 2 m's become just a 1m over here. So that's factoring the m out in the numerator. But again, there's nothing else that we can do to actually simplify this rational expression any further. So that's it. I hope that this has been useful to you. The intent of this was not to show you how to simplify a rational expression, although that certainly doesn't help, but rather to go to the Insert menu, look at the equation editor, and see all of the different kinds of tools that are available to you up here. We looked at the fraction bar, we looked at the script bar for doing exponents, and we looked at the bracket function. A little bit later in this class, we'll be using the tools that are available under the radical one. We're not doing any calculus, so you probably shouldn't have to worry about integral signs and large operators like the summation. Those are mostly used in statistics, a little bit in calculus also. These are mostly for trigonometry. This is for accents, limits again. You'll find some things that will be useful for you in using logarithms, which is right near the end of this class. So I'm going to cut this video off at this point. I don't like these to run too long. I hope this has been useful to you, and I'll see you next time.